Greetings, friends. Welcome to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Katie Wenger from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She is an individual and couples therapist, author, and has a focus on psychoeducational material, which, as I was saying earlier, I'd like to think that's what I do as well. You can find her at higherfulfillment.com. Also on Instagram at The Relationship Consultant. We're going to get right back to her in 2 seconds. Would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers for these shows. Video game streams, lots of cool stuff. Audiobooks, free audiobooks on my channel. Me reading badly my own historical dream literature. Speaking of which, book 16, Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, lovingly reproduced by yours truly, your friendly neighborhood dream wizard, now available on Amazon. You can find all this and more at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, as well as links to downloadable MP3 versions of this podcast. And an encyclopedia I'm still working on. Anyway, that's enough shilling from me. Katie, thank you for being here. It's good to talk to you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Good deal. So what the first thing I didn't know, and I never know anyone until I start talking to them, you are a practicing clinical psychotherapist.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I work with adults mostly. I have some teenage clients, but individuals and couples. And my focus really is on how the individual takes care of themselves, maintains, sees patterns in the relationships in their life, and how that impacts everything.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's probably combining the two most important things regarding being human is taking care of yourself, making sure you're living your life in the most functional way you can, whatever your goals are, and how to also be in functional relationship with other people. That's we just can't. There's two things we can't ignore, and that if they go bad, really destroy people. You know, I'm sure you've had some. You can't tell too many tales of, certainly not with names, but you've probably seen some folks that they're really in a bad way and just needed someone to talk to. You know, just needed a friendly ear to listen and say, I care. Number one, I'm a big fan of the humanist psychologist. It was like Carl Rogers, I think was his name. The idea that said, you know, just be genuine and function with unconditional positive regard, and you got most of the bases covered. Anyway, I'm rambling. I meant to have a question in there.
Well, yeah, I think that a good amount of what I see is clients who prioritize everyone else and everything else of themselves and feel guilty taking time to do the things that they enjoy, whether it, you know, instead of spending time with family or friends or being productive, to just be and do the things that you like to do and nourish your own individuality and identity and recharge, really. I mean, if you can't do that, you can't be the best for everyone else either. Give the best of yourself, and you're missing an important part of life, spending time alone, getting to know yourself, self-love, self-acceptance, everything.
Yeah, I think there's two very powerful ideas. One comes from Alice in Wonderland, and the other one comes from martial arts. This is where my brain goes like, okay, how are those things connected? What? But the question that the caterpillar asked Alice, who are you? And he wanted to know, in my estimation, who's asking me this question? Who am I interacting with in terms of, because that a lot of times that guides our answers. Like, why are you asking? What do you want out of this? I need to know that in some ways, but the broader idea of, knowing who you are, it allows you to have that focus. Well, here's what I want. This is who or what I am. And now I know what to do about other situations. That was one tangent. The other one is, the body mechanics. I love analogies. And the idea of someone is on the ground, they are down, and you want to help them get up. You can't reach out a hand and provide the leverage necessary if you are out of balance. They will just pull you over with them. So I like that physical analogy of you have to have a nice, strong stance. And then from a position of strength, you can offer benefit to other people. It's just not possible when you are out of balance yourself, physically, emotionally, psychologically. Yeah. So those are my two kind of go-tos I like to think about sometimes.
Yeah, those are good visualizations of it, and it just doesn't feel right either. But I think because of how people are taught growing up, or family dynamics, family values that are passed down, you put yourself last, you take care of everyone else.
Yeah,
If someone needs you to do something, you do it. That's what kind people do. But you quite easily get overextended and can't have healthy relationships then.
definitely. That reminds me of I'm a bit obsessed with the yin yang symbol. I love that. I consider it, in my estimation, one of the oldest names for God. I think before we had words, we had symbols that expressed concepts beyond our understanding then and still today, I think. But that the idea of a healthy balance, the idea that balance is necessary to be healthy. You can't be entirely selfish, care for no one. This is not good for you, not good for anyone around you. You can't be so self-sacrificing that there is no you left. Like, what's the purpose of living at that point? There's a weird conundrum there with the concept of altruism and selfishness. I've been playing with this idea in my head, well, for years and years, but having debates in other forums. This is not a forum for debates, but just the idea that if every individual person is expected to self-sacrifice and is not deserving of their own benefit, who is then deserving of being given benefit? Because aren't all of those other people the same level of unworthy to there's some concept in there. It's like you gotta have that balance. I'm gonna take some me time, and yes, I'm gonna help you too, because I love you and you're a great person, and I want you to be healthy. But I've talked to a lot of people lately, and it seems to be a very common theme in today's world, I guess, where people are struggling with boundaries. They don't know where to set them. They don't know what is an appropriate boundary, and they don't feel comfortable telling people who need something, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. This is for me. I need to say no. It sounds like you've had some significant experience with that as a recurring theme, maybe lately or broadly.
Yes, for sure. And what I see a lot in relationships is that you get the two opposites, right? You get someone who takes a lot more and someone who gives a lot more, and they don't understand why their relationship isn't working, or they're unhappy, they're unfulfilled. And, so whether it's like to the narcissistic level,
Yeah.
or it's, just some difficulty in emotional connection or intelligence, or some people are just more self-focused, I guess. And then you get usually who they're drawn to in relationships is like a real giver. So, but that
Yeah.
doesn't sustain.
That isn't necessarily a good thing. Man, we have so many. Again, my brain goes so many. I can think Socrates, the unexamined life, and that wasn't just him being high and mighty. Like, if you're not a philosopher like me, you're not worth anything. No, he's saying if you're not really looking at yourself and questioning your own motivations and tendencies and habits and choices, you're probably missing something. That would be useful to you and make you stronger, healthier, more virtuous, more beneficial to others. However you define that. What am I looking for? Your version of how to be a good and moral person in the world. You really got to look at yourself. I was somewhere else I was going to go with that too. The idea of there's an interesting parallel between pop understanding of psychology and pop understanding of dreams in terms of, and it's I might have said misunderstanding, but it is a misunderstanding. So a lot of people think the dream books, that there is any such thing. No offense to anyone out there. My opinion is you cannot look up one symbol and it is the same in every dream for every person. It's going to vary on the individual, their history, their current time in life, what they associate with that symbol personally, and then nested in the broader human, collective unconscious type of thing of like, well, we as humans interact with the physical world in specific ways that are unique to humans. So there'll be common themes there. But then again, a lake, a tsunami, a chair. They're not all going to mean the same thing to the same people. Where am I going with this? I ramble. So there's a misunderstanding about the necessity of a very personal understanding of dreams. And it's the same with psychology. A lot of people think, oh, it's pop psych. You got this, that, or the other. People misunderstand the idea of, well, you're just projecting or you're in denial. And it's like, you kind of got a little bit of it, but you're not really using it correctly. And it doesn't actually fit for this person in this circumstance for this reason. And that's all the very personal nature of being a, private counselor. You get to know that person and look at their circumstances. You don't have a necessarily a static end point you're trying to reach with every single person. It's very, so where's all this going and how does it relate? I'm coming back around. It's my tangential brain. We get into these situations where sometimes if you got a 60-40 and someone's a 60% giver and the a person in the relationship is a 60% taker, they kind of fit. And then maybe that works for them and they actually have no distress. Then you have some people where it gets too far out of balance and they're like, okay, for us in this situation, under these conditions, this isn't working. I'm not happy. We fight too much. I feel underappreciated. It feels like they're demanding, and vice versa. We get into these, I'm rambling too. I'm about to stop and let you have your 2 cents. We get in these situations where sometimes the person who's the taker feels like the other person's trying to control them. And it's got this weird reversal where what am I trying to say? They feel like boundaries set up are oppressing them based on how much they're not allowed to take anymore. It's weird the way people conceptualize things. So I'm going to stop and let you contribute, please.
Yeah, it's nice to talk to someone, with a similar background that understands some of those concepts. And yeah, the difference between pop psychology and I'm sure pop understanding of dreams too, that you see all the time is very different than what we learn educationally and what we see in practice. But.
For sure. And there's a bit of a paucity of my understanding concerning the most recent development. So I'm really, I have a smattering of the most recent understanding and theories and research into dreams in the last, say, 50, 60, 70 years. And that's going to be its own challenge when I approach that. I've been focusing on the last 2000 years because that's where it all started. And I'm kind of working my way forward in that sense. I kind of hit the, broadly the late 18, early 1900s where everything kind of shifted. That's the other thing too, is that, it bothers me a bit sometimes that Freud gets so much grief from people. Like they don't realize how much of his work was so fundamental, we take it for granted. And then his other stuff that wasn't quite as accurate or might have been a reflection of who he was at the time he had his theories. Yeah, that's more subject to critique. But the idea of just sitting down with someone and asking him, so tell me about your mother. How was that relationship? I mean, that has power to it. That people never realize that until he really made it a thing.
Yeah, getting the idea of the beginning of your history as a person and how you experienced other people was through your parents initially.
Yeah, those primary relationships. And it isn't always, you don't start there necessarily, but it's one of those things where it's like it kind of comes around eventually. And it's fabulous fodder for jokes in terms of like, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar and sometimes it's a penis. One of those things. But I'm also, I bring the so I bring a very eclectic approach to him. A very, I look at Freud and value his contributions to that. I mean, I love that he said, like the royal road to the subconscious is dreams. And Jung's approach and the archetypal things, the idea that we crystallize ideas into certain forms. In some ways, we create our own archetypes. It's kind of what some of our dream images are, and they're unique to us in the way we compose them. We get to write our own characters in a way. I was going somewhere with all that Jung and it's just the broader range of dream theory in general has always been fascinating to me. So I don't know if you've done, is that a part of your work at all, getting into the dream thing, or is it more, it's kind of talking out couples in the same room? We don't really get into that kind of stuff too much.
I go there if it comes up or if I feel like it would be important, like if there's sleep disturbance or something I'm trying to figure out. I am studying hypnosis right now, so that could be a little similar in some ways. I
think it is, yeah.
Looking for a way to really be able to tap into that unconscious and how that plays out in us every day and in our lives is really helpful. So the dream conversation comes up in therapy sessions, but it's not something I do with everyone.
Definitely not like my whole show is built around it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would interpreting them, knowing the person and knowing what they're trying to figure out, I can ask them more questions that seem like connections to me and see
for sure
what from that.
Yeah, that's why I think I've gotten more adept, more accurate, just developed my skill a little bit and nurtured the talent, so to speak, by talking to people a little bit more before we jump into the dream thing. It used to be like, okay, hi, I got a guess, let's do the dream, and then we just do it. That's good too. And then it kind of, so I have these wonderful synchronicities where I started getting most of my guests from the Podmatch site, where it's okay, they're authors, creators, podcasters, artists, and we talk about them, and then I get to say, okay, this is where they're coming from. This is kind of how I start getting a subconscious impression of who you are, and then that sits there unanalyzed, completely just the version of you living in my head that hopefully is going to lean over my shoulder and tell me where to aim the flashlight in the darkness of dreams. It's a little something in there. I love speaking in metaphors and whatnot, but I was going to say something about, so hypnotism. This is fascinating stuff. So a lot of the books I've been reading, there's been better and worse ways of conceptualizing that, in my estimation, from these various authors, but there's always been a consistent theme of looking at, dreams as subconscious experience, and we are disconnected from the outside world. And then there's this somnambulistic stuff where we're lost in our head, but our body's moving around. Then kind of the flip side of that, but not the flip side necessarily, but we're conscious. And then we have states of trance and hypnosis. And that was, animal magnetism, they called it back in the day. And it used to be a magic show, parlor trick type of thing. And then they started looking at, well, we can use this medically. They actually performed some surgical procedures under hypnosis, and the woman was talking and conscious, and they've got like an open whatever here. And they ask her, do you feel any pain? She says, no, I'm fine. And they go on chatting. Doesn't work for everyone, not recommended. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice, but they, assuming those stories are true, this is the documented history. And okay, to bring it back to Freud, sometimes if a patient, so he was very heavy into dreams, like, we're going to talk about your mother, we're going to talk about your dreams. That's what I do. Freud said, paraphrased. And if patients didn't have a dream, he would have them fantasize. Okay, make up a dream. Tell me a story. Let yourself daydream. And there's actually a book I'm going to be working on too, which is the psychology of daydreams, which gets into some of that material. So what does this relate to? I've got a theory, and you can, and this is fun to have another, like I said, fellow professional, a kindred spirit, critique my ideas in a way. I'm developing a theory of dreams. So I believe, it seems obvious to me, and whether it's true, it's my working theory at the moment. The heart beats, the lungs breathe, the brain thinks. And it just there's always something going on. The wheels are always spinning. And what we experience as dreams in sleep is that continuation of the background thought processes that we have when we're awake. We think when we're awake, we keep thinking when we're asleep, and so we get dreams. We have this experience near the liminal zone of being aware enough to remember it. Like me, I sleep like the dead. I sleep deep. So I woke up this morning and I was at a place with some people. I think it might have been a public park, but not a public park, well, like a campground maybe. But there was a building, and that's it. I don't know. I can't, like, that's the kind of dream images I get. And long story short on that. Oh boy. You're doing a lot of listening. I'm sorry. This isn't a great interview. I was trying to explain my theory. Go ahead. You had something to say.
I can say that something interesting for your research on that, or your formulation when you're, writing that book or exploring that, is that well, I like to try any like treatment or theories before I use them in practice. So doing, going to a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist and doing hypnosis. And since I started doing that, I haven't had any dreams. So does that in a way replace the need to dream? I wonder, but I have been sleeping pretty hard also. So maybe that's why.
It's tough to say. It's so unique to the individual and to the circumstances. And I think there do seem to be broader patterns, though. Like someone who was a lucid dreamer from an early age stays a lucid dreamer. Very few people become a lucid dreamer later in their life. There's something there. People that have sleepwalking or sleep talking, they do it throughout their life. It doesn't seem to change. So it seems like there's some stable either personality or biological component to it. Definitely. I mean, if we believe hypnotism does anything, it could have the effect of decreasing dreams for a time. You could be more tired and sleeping deeper. I think the ability to remember dreams does fluctuate per individual, but like if there's really prolific dreamers, like they dream all the time, every night, long, memorable sequences, that tends to be consistent over time. So I was building up to something with the idea of thinking in our sleep. My inkling, my current kind of what I'm leaning towards is that what we experience as dreams might actually be closer to what our waking thought process actually is, if that makes sense. Because we don't really think in words and paragraphs and nice discrete ideas. It's a lot of images and associations and sensations and emotional connections. And then we translate those into words, and even to ourselves, we tell ourselves a story about what's happening. But I don't think many people think actually think like we think, if that makes sense. So there's something going on there. It's like our waking thoughts are our subconscious thoughts as filtered through waking attention. Something like that. This is not well formed, and I'm not going to defend that to the death, but there's something in there. So in a way, it's like our subconscious expression in dreams is more like what it's like to experience thought as a self-observer without having the meat suit pulled over that to distract us in a million ways and put intention to our thoughts. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, it does make sense. And, the feeling of what I experience when I'm doing the hypnosis is that, like, I can feel the moment when I can access my subconscious. It's like you can feel that like melding, like both sides kind of integrating, and that you're accessing something deeper. And it's similar to what you feel, or what I feel anyway. I can only say for myself when I'm falling asleep. But with hypnosis, you never, well, I guess you could fall asleep, but I haven't. And so it's like that crossover, to
definitely. Yeah. And there's that whole field of view. I used to call it, there was observations of trance, sometimes drug induced, the classic Oracle at Delphi style, breathing vapors from a vent in the ground, leaking natural gas. I can't believe they did that, that kind of thing. They're like, let's go huff vapors and get weird visions. Fair enough. But then there's also, deeply meditative states. I mean, there's a lot of people who, they're looking for that moment of detachment when they're like, they feel, in a way, kind of feel like they float free of their own self, their mind, their body, in a way, without, astral travel or anything. Although some people, I think, have conceptualized it that way, deep meditative states. I was going somewhere with that. Hypnosis. I think I'm a poor candidate for hypnosis. I'm a little too much on the disagreeable side, personality wise. So I don't surrender control very well, not over my own mind or to anyone else. I'm very personable and I'm on this weird combination of highly disagreeable and extremely open. I'm like, so that's why I will argue with anyone, kind of thing.
I don't think that's unusual or doesn't make you a good candidate. I think it's a function of how you process through the day and how you are. And like you said, you're always thinking, your thoughts are always, when you do something like that, you are giving yourself permission to take a break from all of that and you're giving it over to someone else, which feels pretty great for me to take a break from that. I don't know if you would call it control or like go, 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 and
Sure.
just be, and then see what you discover.
That's a
So,
good open question for me personally. Like, should I try it? Would I benefit from it? Is that actually something that would be good for me? Of like, you can put this stuff down for a while and it's okay. It's not going to hurt anybody. If you, Ben, you're not that important. You don't have to, you don't have to think about everything all the time. Uh, then again, it's also my favorite hobby too. So I'm like, I don't know, 10 minutes of trying to think about nothing. I could do so many things with that time. But then I'll get obsessed with stuff and I'll think about stuff that doesn't really have any result. I'm just thinking. So would it be better spent letting go of thought? It's a good question. And I shouldn't be, resistant in any way to exploring that. I think that, well, and then I should probably, as I progress through the whole dream thing, get better at understanding, what are those states of mind that give people better access to these memories, better focus, whatever my process is that we're going to get around to in a minute. It seems to work for, someone will tell me a 2-minute story. We'll go through it again and we'll get 20 minutes of material filling in so many gaps. Because once you get back in, you're looking out your eyes at the dream, things come back to you. You're like, whoa, now that you mention it, there was another person there and this is what they were doing. And that wasn't in the story of the dream. 100%
right.
happens every time. So I never worry about that. I tell people they can't do it wrong because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Whatever you remember, there will be more than you thought was there. I was going somewhere with that too. I got up early this morning. I didn't sleep long tonight. I'm in ramble mode today. I just love talking about theories and my obsessive, fascination with dreams in general.
Yeah, I've learned a lot in our short time talking. I think, in terms of also the neuropsychology that you were just talking about is very interesting, understanding all of it, the different levels really and components and how everything works. So.
Yeah, that's part of where I was getting to it. I've got all the historical, theoretical perspective before we started doing more scientific trials. Probably the most recent dream researcher I'm familiar with is a William Domhoff. I think it was University of Santa Cruz, and he built, and it's still functional there. You can add to, it's called the Dream Bank. I think it's dreambank.net. And his approach was to start quantifying dream imagery. Like, here's the type of setting. Here's the number of trees you saw. Here's the number of people. Here's the number of interactions with animals. It's kind of breaking it down to those discrete elements and trying to find patterns in that kind of data. I don't know that he's come to many conclusions. I need to read more of his stuff, but that's going to be the fun part, is reading a lot of recent scientific papers. It's not as interesting as some of the older dream books. I want to get those all published first to get the foundational knowledge. And then now based on where we've been, what do we know, or what do we think we know now? So,
yeah. So this is really life's work. That's cool.
Yeah, I do plan it. I spent the first, 20 some odd years doing, inpatient psych to really understand psychology. And then I wanted to get around to, doing something else, but putting another 20 years into this, I hope. Someday I hope to become a real wizard and be perhaps some kind of an expert that people could actually come to and say, well, this guy actually knows what he's talking about, and here's why. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't actually want to be famous. I just want to be good, if that makes sense.
Good
at what I do. Yeah. That kind of thing. We're not talking a lot about you. I should ask more questions. You were going to be working on a book soon, or you have one in the works, or you've already published one. I don't remember what I asked you.
It's being released in April 23rd, and it's called Obstacles Under the Surface, same name as my podcast, and really looking at what is beneath our surface and how that affects how we behave, how we conceptualize things, how we interact with others, and looks at some of those themes there to give people an idea of where to start with looking at different areas of what might be there. And then you can, once you have awareness, then you can have change. So if there's something that is causing you difficulty in your life or is haunting you, so to speak, then you can process it, professionally or on your own and move forward, create the mindset you want.
Definitely. That's so many people need to be more aware that the first step is awareness of that there's a problem. Something's not right here. What are the signs? Maybe how do I know? But getting to some level of there's something to look at that needs to be addressed, and that's obstacles under the surface is a fantastic metaphor for that. The idea of being on in the water, and you can see some of the rocks up above the water, but there's some down below that are going to scrape that hull, because what you are is deeper, and it's going to have obstacles to your progress. And I love that metaphor. That's great.
Yeah, like an iceberg.
Yeah,
that's what I
for sure. Yeah. Titanic. So you don't want to be the Titanic, personally. I think a lot of people do that too. Yeah, they head full steam ahead towards, executing plans that are poorly thought out, or in good old common human hubris. I think I'm better than I really am, and bam, right into an iceberg. Yeah, kind of reckless, headlong plunging towards some goals without enough proper caution in a way.
Right. A lot of people just stuff it down or compartmentalize. They feel something is off, but they don't look into it, and they don't realize they could be much happier and probably more successful if they addressed it. But nobody wants discomfort either. Our brain steers us away from discomfort.
Yeah.
So
that's a tough one too. Telling people you should be temporarily less happy to become more happy later. And they're like, but I could just be a little less happy all the time and not have to do that hard part. Right. And I think most of us do. I think most of us kind of pick and choose our comfort level with discomfort in a way. And no one ever changes until they decide this isn't working anymore. And I was talking about that with someone too. There's like, how do I conceptualize magic? Because I think it's real, but in a metaphorical way. I call myself a wizard. I'm speaking magic words, I hope, and understanding cause and effect to the extent that I can help people predict the future, their own future. This is going to go well or poorly because here's the chain of events. So trying to use that wisely and to good effect. I was going somewhere with that. Magic words. Magic. The idea of magic. Changing our mind. There's what we believe before, and then there's a new understanding that is different than what it was before. And they don't actually touch in a way. There's something in that gap between what we used to believe and what we now believe, or how we saw something and how we see it now. That's where I think there's some kind of a magic happens, the eureka moment that suddenly we see the world in a different way. And something psychology's been trying to figure out, how do we make that happen more consistently? And we've got some pretty good methods, but then at some point we have to admit it's a roll of the dice, or synchronicity, or right time, right place. There's some esoteric or metaphysical concept in there, I think, that is what I describe as magic. There's some magic to changing your mind that I certainly don't understand. I don't know if that speaks to anything you've experienced.
Well, I definitely think that there are signs that come up in our life, whether it's something that you physically see, or it's something that jumps out in your mind all of a sudden that wasn't there before. And, where does that come from? Everyone, I guess, has their own beliefs. Yeah.
There's also a kind of a magic to associations in the mind. Like, why does one thing make you feel something or remind you of another? We can kind of understand it. It makes sense to us, but then it's like, what made that actually happen? I love the ancient Greek conceptions of what an idea is and what a daimon is, which is, then became demons, and we mistrust that. But it's inner voice of intuition, and the sudden, it feels like an insertion of something that was not there before. Why do I suddenly have this understanding, this idea of a thing, or a new idea, or the idea of a new form of a thing? But so was it Socrates? He consulted his daimon about whether he should flee or allow himself to be put to death. And his and he said that he trusted that inner intuition, and that inner intuition said, don't run. This is how you lived your life. You need to end it this way. Very interesting. Now, there's, I'm not going to get on anyone's case if they'd prefer not to drink hemlock. You listen to your Diamond, whatever that is. But I think a lot of people are suspicious of their own intuition, and sometimes for good reason, because we jump to the wrong conclusion. We have, inclinations to be self-protective that might shoot ourselves in the foot, but also we can't ignore it. That doesn't help either. You got to be able to trust that voice in a way of saying, if that voice says something's not right, it's not. It absolutely is not. Now, what it is going to take some figuring, maybe, but those senses are very rarely wrong. Very rarely any more wrong than me going, having the sense of touch. This is a pen. It doesn't tell me what to do with it. I can throw it across the room and the cat will chase it, or I can write something with it. But there's a tactile sense there that gives us as much feedback as that intuitive sense.
Right. Yeah. I think too many people ignore that intuition, and I describe it to people as a physical feeling as well as the awareness of it. And you think, you either have self-doubt, or you think, I'm just overreacting here, or, being judgmental if it's something that you sense about another person. And I fully believe in, taking a pause and thinking about things and processing things before you act on them or make a decision. But there is something to that feeling that I don't think you should ever ignore or push away and say, that's not right. It's their reason to tell you something, to warn you, whatever it might be.
Yeah. I'd say, especially if you don't understand it, don't suppress it. Don't jump to conclusions. Maybe don't act on it yet, but don't push it away. Certainly sit with it and then there's just that problem of, well, that's an uncomfortable feeling. That intuition feels icky. Yeah. Maybe because it's a real threat. I was thinking about this. It made me remember, you said something about like a pause and think about it, give a moment for consideration. I used to, many years ago, understand the idea of, well, sleep on it is kind of like, okay, don't rush to a decision yet. Metaphorically sleep on it. Lately, I think, no, literally sleep on it. I have had so many things I went to bed not being able to figure out. I wake up the next day and then the idea comes to me in a way that I don't think it would have had I stayed up all night trying to solve a problem I was never going to get, because I needed to just turn the active, focused attention off and let my thoughts be what they are and see what pieces fell into place. It's become such a consistent solution to a lot of things that I can't recommend it strongly enough. Literally, sleep on your problems. Go to bed and let them sort.
I definitely think there's neurological processing that can happen while you're awake, especially with tough problem or decision. Your brain figures out for you while you sleep to some extent.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's like a neurological thing that cannot happen when conscious attention is in the way. That's actually in some of these other books. So rediscovering, I'm finding confirmation of currently accepted theory. I am rediscovering that it has been thought a long time ago. And they talk about the idea of, there's been a lot of conceptions of how to understand sleep, dreams, daydreams, trance, hypnotism. So along those lines, they talk about the idea of abstracting your thoughts. And what they meant at that time was, not thinking abstract thoughts, but the idea of abstraction, the moment of distraction, inattention that suddenly yields a new way of looking at something. You let yourself get distracted away from your step away from the problem, think about something else. And what I call it is let it percolate, like brewing coffee. It's not done until it's done. It's going to take as long as it takes for that water to flow through the grounds, and then you'll have an actual pot of coffee. I was going somewhere with that, but stepping away from problems. And this was all in relation to your book too.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I thought the podcast would be a good way to delve into further topics that, I can add to the book, maybe would in the future, and also have guests on and give their perceptions of different parts of that and their expertise. So that's been a really neat experience too.
Yeah. How many episodes are you in now?
Oh, I'm pretty new. I think I'm on 8.
Okay.
So I started like with the new year.
Good deal. Yeah. Well, I was in the same position about 2 years ago. Now this will be, what is it, episode 117? That's crazy to me. I've been doing this, at least one a week. I've been trying to put them out there. It'll only take the next 20 years to get 1,000 episodes. That's okay. I'll do it. I'll get there eventually. Any, you don't want to ask the, who is your favorite guest? That's not what I'm asking for, but does anything stand out in terms of some conversations you've had recently that were, you probably wouldn't have had without inviting someone to talk in that kind of forum?
Well, I always like to talk, especially to people who have knowledge in areas that I don't. So one guest recently is an expert and is an addictions counselor, and is an expert in that area, and I've never done that part of counseling. It comes into our sessions, obviously, for people that have dealt with it in the past. It's not the presenting concern, but it is quite interesting. And he was really into neuropsychology too. And so he was talking about that, about what parts of your brain impact that, what processes you have to go through to get to recovery and sustain it. And I learned a lot from him. So it's things like that, and it's things like talking to you today, and this being such a different area that you focus on and that you learn about and have extensive knowledge of that I really enjoy. I like learning. And, I think that can only benefit my clients and my own concepts that I develop to put out there to hopefully help people get to a better place and solve problems.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're such a good listener. That's probably why I've been talking so much. But then I just ramble anyway. I'm trying to. It's a weird thing. It's like I can't just not care whether I'm carrying the conversation, my half of the conversation in some ways. And then I also just have a bunch of ideas that are always trying to bust out. Hey, that just made me think of a thing. Let me tell you. So.
Yeah, it's hard to sit with silence.
It really is. And then, well, there's that. And if we were just chatting, I'd probably relax a little bit, but with the recording thing, like, this also needs to be interesting. I need to have something interesting to say. There's a lot of pressure on that. I mean, are you finding that as a host of like, it would almost be, I should just stop talking and ask you, what is your experience been as a new host trying to make a show?
It can definitely relate pressure to keep the conversation going and to put out interesting conversation and material for the people that are listening. I sometimes find myself that I've talked a lot, or even in sessions sometimes, and that's when I remind myself to stop and ask a question to deepen my understanding and deepen the conversation. So that's usually where I go with it. But yeah, when you're doing something like a podcast or a recording, you are you definitely feel that pressure to talk. And mine isn't video either, so you take out that of being able to see people and being entertained by that, facial expressions, interactions, whatever, and it's just the audio. So it's a little different in that way.
For sure. Yeah. Well, you've probably seen me doing that same thing in terms of like, wait a minute, I'm talking too much. I have a guest. There's actually another person here. Let me stop and throw it back to you, or return the focus back to. And people hear me say these things all the time. I've repeated some of this stuff several times. But the interesting part, the new part, is you. And I want to make sure, whoever the guest is, they don't feel put on the spot, but they also feel heard. They feel like they have their chance to talk, something unique to contribute. So if they go to, speaking of which, if folks go to hirefulfillment.com, they got links to the podcast and stuff like that.
Yes.
That'd be kind of the one-stop shop.
Yep. Everything is there. And everything is on Instagram too, I think, and the link tree there. So I connect everything.
That's one thing I haven't done yet is a link tree. I probably should. I've got like literally 16 different social medias. I just spam my new episodes to that kind of thing. So, but I want to go where people are. Like if you're on Twitter and you're not on Minds or whatever, I'm on both places. You can find me wherever you want.
Right.
Kind of what I'm trying to do on that, a little behind the scenes, like the shop talk type of stuff.
Yeah, and that takes some time too to just put it all out there on all the different forums.
Yeah. Takes a long time to kind of get the concept of what you're doing. Like, what is this thing? That's like when I started looking at the dream thing, I'm like, okay, I want to do dream interpretation, so I can just be Ben the Dream Guy. And I'm like, or I considered a bunch of different branding things, and I'm like, there's kind of there's a history and tradition of magi being dream interpreters, so ancient wizards in Egypt and whatnot, and the modern concept, probably the most popular or well-known wizard outside of Harry Potter is Gandalf. I'm like, but then I also consider Socrates a wizard. Oh, there's lots of wizards. Nikola Tesla was a wizard in my estimation. There's a lot of wizards, and there's evil wizards in my estimation. Those are the necromancers and enchanters that manipulate people like puppets. Magic, so to speak. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying good and evil in the world for sure. You realize that, I think, the more life experience that you have, and, maybe some not great experiences, but also the really wonderful ones. There's a dichotomy there. And, we were talking about magic earlier, and presence of good and evil is something that I think we can see pretty often.
For sure.
But I was going to ask you also, what does that term mean to you, or I don't understand that term completely.
Fair enough. It's probably been a while since I've explained it. Well, thank you for asking about me. It's my favorite subject, right? I do actually have, for anyone out there listening, if you go to the, Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube, you'll find episode 2 of my Incantus Phylacterium. I love clever titles. It's just like Latin for word container, a place I keep my words, any random thoughts I have. So I did an episode, what the hell is a dream wizard, or a wizard in general? Answering the question, does this guy really think he's a wizard? Yeah, actually I do, but not in I can't conjure a fireball and move things with my mind. This is, psychic powers. Maybe they're real. I don't know. I don't have them. Okay, so I go to the root of the word, and it's W-Y-S-E, wise, the idea of the old, wisdom. And basically the archetype of the wizard is, you kind of see it's an old man, long gray beard because he's old and he's been around and he's seen a lot, and he walks with a staff because, well, he's old, but he's, and as I mentioned before, it is a person who can speak magic words, things that are true, things that are useful, things that are of benefit to others, words that cause a change in the world, for good or ill, in one way or the other. And the idea of the classic trope is also scrying in a crystal ball. They can see or know things that other people don't. Esoteric knowledge, long, deep study. Think of a wizard in his tower surrounded by books, Merlin style from the Disney movie. But also that seeing the future is understanding the laws of cause and effect. And that's a lot of what we do, I think, in psychology, which is the human laws of cause and effect. If you go down this road, bad things will happen. If you do not want bad things to happen, if that's your goal in therapy, I can tell you, or we can work out together how to get you off that path and choose a better path. So I think of, to whatever degree you would agree or not, I think you might be a wizard in your own right. In some ways, there's a certain level of intensity of focus to it in a area of specialty, maybe, but I think we're there's more wizards in the world than people realize. And they're we have different ways of conceptualizing it today. So I'm bringing back the old term. I don't know if that makes sense, or if there's some points of clarification you wanted to get into.
Yeah. Just to give you a heads up, Benjamin, I have about a half hour.
Oh shit.
No,
I'm so sorry. We just rambled. We haven't even gotten to the dream thing. That caught me off guard. I swallowed some water the wrong way. Let's do this, because I didn't realize we only had a half an hour left. The dream thing usually takes longer than that. So why don't we do a different approach? You said you've got dreams of a certain theme. And we were talking anyway that this was going to be a tough approach because you may not have one complete specific instance of a dream in a given night, beginning to end, that you could run through.
Yeah, they blur.
They blur together. So why don't you tell me about the dreams in general, and we'll see if we can make something of it,
Sure.
Yeah. So let me do a little timestamp here. 50:30. Okay. Yeah, we should have gotten this like a half an hour ago. We just said too much fun talking. Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks highlighting the psychological principles which inform our dream experience and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, featuring the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. What are these dreams about?
So the main concept is this place that I go to, that I've never, to my knowledge, gone to in real life. But it looks slightly different each time, so it's a house. And sometimes the structure of it is a little bit different, but the outside always looks the same. The entryway is always the same. I don't, here's maybe an interesting part. I don't really go in the first floor of it, other than sometimes when I walk through to the left and go, it's all empty, at least on the first floor, from what I can see. And sometimes I walk through to the left, this big empty room with two like regular glass doors that people have on the back of their house that open out and go outside there too. And it's like a remote house that I don't know if it's on top of a mountain, but it kind of like gives the feeling like it's elevated, and walk around out there. But I think the more interesting part is that I always go in the front door and first and go up the stairs. And the upstairs always looks different, but it's very big with a lot of rooms. And I get the feeling that they're empty too, like the first floor, but it's a familiar place to me. It's not like in the dream, I don't feel like I'm going somewhere. Like, why am I here? Or why am I going in someone's house or going into this house kind of thing? I'm supposed to be there. It's familiar to me in the dream, but I don't know why. And so upstairs, like I said, there's lots of different rooms, but they're kind of differently placed and different sizes. And sometimes during the dreams, one dream, they will shift. So I'll walk back to the one room, and I think this is the one I go to the most. It's like a really large bedroom. And sometimes it's like a regular square room with lots of different beds, or sometimes one bed. Like it's almost like, with a really big family, like maybe a few kids share that bedroom, or sometimes it's just one. And sometimes it's more narrow, like a rectangle, and there's a hallway and you go back into another room. But what I'm doing during the dreams is really just walking around exploring. And sometimes I'll think I'm there with certain people, and then I walk into a room and realize that there's other people. They're all people that I know. There's other people there, And those are the people that live there with me or that I visit often. And I just keep walking around exploring. Sometimes I'm trying to figure out who goes where, like who would this bedroom be best for? Should there be people sharing this room, or should this be a singular bedroom? I don't ever do normal activities of living, like eat or sleep, or in some ways it seems like I'm there a short period of time, but then it will feel like a lot of time has gone by and I didn't realize how fast the time was moving.
Okay.
That's the general idea.
Yeah. I think I wrote
And
down.
going back there, when I have the dream, I say to myself, like, oh, I'm here again. You know, I recognize it.
Mundane. So when you say you recognize it, I'm here again. Do you have a bit of a do you have the experience of knowing it is a dream, or just, oh, I'm back at this house and not really understanding the context, like I am sleeping?
I don't think I've ever realized it's a dream until I
Fair
wake
enough.
up.
Okay.
When I'm in it, it seems like current life.
Gotcha. That is the typical experience of of most people's dreams. No inkling. And there's even a controversy that, is anyone really a lucid dreamer, or do they just have the dream experience that they're dreaming and that they're controlling their dreams, whether they are or not? That's impossible to prove. So you might as well say, all right, if you feel like you have control of your dreams, it makes you happy, so be it. That's probably what it is.
Right.
Kind of like, are we living in a simulation? Who knows? A few
I have
things.
I realized they're a dream. Yeah, but not this one.
Yeah, no, but it is a familiar place, and a place you feel like you belong, or belongs to you in a way, or a place you're welcome.
Yes, I don't always, sometimes I feel like it belongs to me, sometimes I don't, almost like you're house hunting. But
Interesting, yeah.
it's not just, it's someone's house that I know. You know, it's not foreign to me. So it's not like house hunting in that way. Like I'm really looking at, you know, just going there to see it or see if I want to buy it. It's like a visit,
For
you know,
sure.
or it's like coming home.
And you said, well, if we give this a time frame, you said when did you have the first dream of this kind, and when's the last time you can remember having it? Roughly.
So I've probably been having it for about 10 years. And I haven't had it in a while, which is strange because I would say have it every couple months, but I probably haven't had it in like 8 or 9 months at least. Not a full year, but it's been a while.
Okay. You said that typically or always it is the same exterior of the house, but sometimes it feels like yours and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Very interesting there. So you're entering a space that, so if the house represents some consistent idea that doesn't change, what changes might be how that idea is being used, how it relates to something else. Where am I trying to go with that? What's an analogy for that kind of thing? Seeing the same thing in different contexts.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that makes sense to me. I think that based on maybe what my mind is trying to figure out or accomplish is why it shifts in some ways in the internal composition.
There is an interesting relationship, speaking of the word relationship, between your professional work and the idea of a home being a place where people live, usually people who are related or in a relationship with each other. The distribution of people into rooms in the house, where do they fit? Where do they belong? What is the shape of the room as it relates to the people? How many people can share this space or should. There's a lot of exploration of the decision-making process in terms of, that seems like it relates directly to your professional work. I mean, have you thought about it from that angle?
No, I hadn't.
Okay. That was kind of my first thing when you're like, oh, and sometimes there's people there that or that live there with you. And that might even be the broader concept of your house, your own personal relationships. And then sometimes there's other people and you're trying to help them find their place in their rooms and how many people can fit into a room. There's something there. I want to stop there for a moment and let you kind of just say anything comes to mind or give some feedback on that kind of theme. You think we're heading in some right direction? It's tough when there's broad strokes and we haven't started with a discrete instance. So I'm really challenging myself to bring some unique perspective to it without asserting this is necessarily true.
And one of the questions I always am left with when I wake up is why was there a different composition of people there? That seems like something
that is a puzzling aspect of the dream experience itself, is like, why different people this time?
Sometimes it's my family, and sometimes it's like family friends that live there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me with the idea of, if you're examining the broader concept of, so the first, not the first, but along the lines here, one of the first things that came to my idea is this house is actually your own mind. So you've got this representation of going into your own mind, and everything moves around in there. But there are places, and there are your concepts of people and your relationship with them and their relationship to each other. I don't know if it feels right, like I'm onto something, like, of course this house is familiar to me. I live there.
Well, but then I think I would always feel like I live there. Like, I think there's something in what you're saying and relating that to the fact that sometimes it's not my house or going to be my house. And I'm not thinking of, in the dream, it's not like, well, last time I was here, I lived here, and now the family friends live here.
Yeah.
It's just,
we do need to account for that. My thought, and I did kind of press it, like, okay, well, how does that fit together? My thought was, sometimes what you're doing is you're going into your own head to look at someone else's situation, if that makes sense. So you do go into the same, it's something about the consistency of the exterior and the variability of the interior is where I'm going with that. And sometimes the variability of the interior is a thought experiment, if that makes sense. You've changed it to say these people are not the same, because now I'm considering, gone into my own mind to look at the broader concept of how relationships are composed, and now the pieces in the rooms are different. And this isn't actually my house. I'm thinking about someone else's house. Does that make sense of that element of it? Or
yeah,
it either resonates or it doesn't. If it doesn't, I'm on the wrong track, and that's fine.
No, I think it does resonate. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good interpretation of it, and a probable one, that it's related to my work and it's related to figuring things out and trying to help people figure out where they fit. I don't know if this is helpful.
Yeah.
The one I said, I don't really question anything when I'm there, but the one thing I do question is why parts of it are empty, or sometimes I question why the layout of the rooms changes. Like, sometimes the hallway to the left has like 10 bedrooms. Sometimes it has 2.
And that is an experience you have in the dream. Like, you become confused by that at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not reflecting on the dream, like, why was that different this time? It's like, so there's something about experiencing that confusion about the layout that is relevant to that experience. That's why these are usually better going through a single experience. I'm not going to make any excuses. That it is what it is. Just looking at some of the other things. So let's actually go back through the notes. I did want to get to that idea of the first floor being typically empty. And even the second floor, a lot of the rooms are empty, but the first floor really noticeably empty. Like there's nothing
No,
here.
nothing. No furniture.
No furniture.
Nothing. Yeah. Someone's moving in or moving out.
And no one really lives there. This is not like living room furniture and a dining room table. And there's something about the first floor being unoccupied that is meaningful to you, that expresses something. If we go with the idea that it is your going into your own mind to have a look, you've conceptualized this as let's intentionally run ourselves through some problem solving in a way. Mm-hmm. What does it mean that the first floor is empty? There's no obstacles, but it's also not lived in. This is not a space for people to occupy and live. I don't know if that brings anything to mind.
Yeah, it definitely feels a little cold to me because there isn't anything in it, but there is a warm sense to it too because everything is light colored, like there's lots of big windows, a lot of, at least on the first floor, a lot of light coming in, like light wood floors, light colored walls. Outside of the house is light. It's not wood. I think it's like it's like light colored siding on the outside. But there's also once or twice there was like a semi wraparound porch and I was out by myself. I don't know what that means. I wasn't doing anything, just kind of taking in the landscape.
If we go with the metaphor, getting out of your own head and just being, just chilling, just enjoying something pretty. That could be it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting to me that it sometimes feels cold because it's empty, or it can feel cold and warm at the same time because of how it's constructed. It feels warm, but because it's empty, it doesn't seem homey. It doesn't seem.
Yeah. I wonder if something came into my mind about like professional distance. Something about that space says like, so you've got a physical manifestation of you've got to physically enter to then progress to doing what else you're doing. But in order to get to the upstairs where the problem solving happens, or the interaction, the consideration of things and their relationships, and there's something very, very, okay, two things there. First thing is, you've got to pass through a layer of emptiness, almost a barrier. The idea comes to mind as professional boundaries, in a way of like, okay, you're going to go through this place where you don't live here. Nobody lives here. This is a place devoid of things. But it's not devoid of things. It's more that it's things that don't get in the way is what I'm going for. It's like there has to be that layer where you're not invested in it, and the people you're populating the dream, they don't live there either. There's something else that occupies that space, and it's not ugly, but it's not warm and welcoming, exactly like lived in holiday cheer type of celebratory atmosphere. It's a little more cold and clinical, sterile, professional, perhaps. All of these things come to mind. If that's really, you're like, yeah, or not so much, or you have a different take on it now that I've said a few things.
Well, I think that what that reminds me of is my need, whether it's my personality or whatever it is, that to have transitions between, parts of my day is one example. So like if I go right from work to something else or right from work to home with like I feel stressed or overwhelmed without transitions.
Yeah.
Or like time to just be quiet and think. So that's what that brings to mind for me, that would represent that transitional space that maybe I crave in life and don't always get, and really just disturbs me. Like it's hard for me to shift without transition time.
Oh yeah. No, I feel that 110%. So that's maybe a better way of, it isn't really, it is more about the transitional space itself. And you've given yourself literally an empty space that has no purpose other than existing as space in a way. And it's neither a good thing nor a bad thing, but it's not meant to actually be anything. There's no furniture there. And actually that's very interesting too, because it's on the first floor, and that's what gives you access to those double doors that lead out onto the porch where you can just chill. Maybe your transition is, I'm not going to deal with problems today, I'm going outside, because that's what I need to do. And then we've got the idea of going up to help the people. And so that was the second idea I was going to get around to. You know, every time we consider a new problem, it's going to have familiar elements. It's going to be a room of a new size. And my thought was, and maybe I'm reading this into it and I'm hearing you wrong or not, but you seem to be more confused or puzzled by the fact that the rooms do change more than why a particular shape, or how would you parse that out?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not really puzzled by the shape. The shape feels normal, other than the dreams where the room shifts. If I leave a room and come back and it looks different, then in the dream, I'm thinking, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But
something came to mind just now, the idea of we never enter the same river twice.
Mm-hmm.
You heard that before? I mean, probably, yeah. But there's something there. Like we enter the same room. We never enter the same room twice. I mean, it's later in time. Molecules have shifted. We can get very technical with it, but it's the idea that it's, you know, it's this continuity over time is a funny thing. So there might be something there. If we're dealing with, so there's something very measurement oriented in the shape of a room changing, or the fact of different rooms of different shapes at different times. You know, so you're having the experience of the representation that the configuration of the room, the physical space of a room, means something, and I'm trying to tease that out. It's measurements. I don't know if that's making you think of anything. I'm running up against a lack of words.
I don't really know what to make of that, other than like maybe trying to decide if it's something to, like, is this something I have to figure out or something I don't have to figure out kind of thinking. There's I mean, it's not a scary dream, but there is an element of fear in that sometimes I lose people in the house, and then I'll find them in a different room. Or if I come back and it's a different size, and let's say there was 4 people in there before and there's just 1 now, then I kind of go and look for the other 3. So I don't know what the measurement of it, how to exactly connect that.
Yeah. I'm listening to you and letting my own thoughts percolate. There's something about knowing the measurements that gives us a sense of control in some ways. Like if we know how far we have to drive, we can adequately fill our gas tank. There's like a functional element of preparing for something based on an accurate understanding of what it is. And there's some kind of a metaphor of properly grasping a situation in knowing the shape of a room properly, and that each situation is different in its shape. There's a lot of what I think our brain does in these dreams is use these associative symbolic representations of concepts so the concept of getting an understanding of a situation might be, what is the size of the room and how many people are in it? You know, what is the size and shape, etc. What are the dimensions? When we speak of that too, the layers of a problem, or multiple problems stacked up together. I want to look at the time frame too. Speaking of time, I know we got like maybe 5 minutes or so, but I think we're close to giving you something to sleep on at the very least. Did you start your own private practice about 10 years ago? Is that where you might have entered, or some new phase of it? Opened a new location, branched out, started accepting a different kind of clientele?
Yeah, I mean, that is around the time when I went out on my own, maybe a little bit before that, but I was already thinking about it.
Mm,
And so that it could be related in that way. I mean, those timelines do match up somewhat. Probably about 10 years ago was when I seriously started thinking about how to do it, to put it into action.
gotcha. Yeah. So I think there is that. And there's almost always something like that, some event, some shift, some new problem. And then if we think that's related, possibly less than a year ago or thereabouts, you might have finally come to some sense of some faith in your own competence in a way that made the dream unnecessary to recur. I think
Yeah,
there's
that's
something in
good.
there because this all leans. I mean, I'm getting themes of like the professional practice of helping people understand the situation of their relationship dynamics and who fits in what rooms, uh, and how they all live together. And you return to that, like, am I doing it well? Are there new problems? And maybe I wanted to give you an explanation too for the idea of why are you puzzled that the rooms keep changing. Maybe there's something in there of the idea of like, I thought I had this room problem sorted out and they keep changing. Why do they keep changing? Why do I keep being presented with new challenges to my experience and expertise that still puzzle me? I'm like, wow, I thought I'd seen it all. I guess I haven't. Does something like that feel right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Um, that is a challenging feeling when you feel like you are at a good level of knowledge and something challenges that level of knowledge. Or I feel like in my practice a lot, I tried to shift the way that I work and sometimes even concepts to fit the strategy or to fit the individual. Like I pride myself on having a very individualized, creative, out of the box approach. Um, but that internally does feel like this is challenging. You know,
Yeah.
it's not.
I've
It's
tried to
not.
lean into that pridelessness when I hit things where I'm like, I have no idea what to do with this. I should probably just say that. That kind of genuineness of like, wow, I'm here with you and I'm supposed to be helping and I'm stuck. I don't know what else to do. And I'm just gonna own that and we're gonna keep trying. Um sometimes coming to that place, and I'm not perfect at it. I've still got my pride, and get my back up on things. But sometimes getting to a place like that where you're more comfortable with the idea that I, I may never know everything, and that's okay. And that's probably, I should have known that all along. And you can let go of even the desire to know everything and go, okay, it'll be an interesting when I run across the next challenge that I don't have a ready answer for, and I'm going to need to think about it. I'll get it eventually. I'll measure the room. I'll find out what people fit. But that idea of needing to have an immediate answer for everything, uh, maybe that might have faded for you as well. I think that is also a comfort with competence as well, where you got to prove yourself, and you do. Well, you got to demonstrate you can do the job. But at a certain point, you're like, I'm only human, and I will always face new challenges that make me need to grow a little bit and stop and think and do all the things I tell my customers that are healthy for them. I got to do it for myself too. We're back around at the beginning of our conversation with like, self-care in general. So I would be interested to see if this dream comes back. And I would say in my estimation, there's a good chance it might, but very much less frequently. You may not need it anymore, but it's one of those things where something will probably come up, and most likely it'll be not professional. It'll be personal. You'll have some challenge to a personal relationship where you need to go back into the house and take a look at the rooms again, and this time it'll be people closer to you, and you're like, what do I do with this? Where does everyone supposed to live? So, well, I hope we got at least some interesting things to think about, some perspectives you might not have considered before.
Yeah, definitely. I'm surprised I didn't think of the idea of the first floor being empty as like a transition or like a a space that you move through. I forget exactly how you described it, but when you said that, I made sense, and then it made me think, why didn't I
Yeah. A space that was
question?
designed to be empty and is consistently empty. That's amazing. So, and I was wrong. I was leading it. So I rattle a lot of doorknobs, and I'm happy to be wrong. If I say something wrong, and you're like, not that, but think about. But I just thought of this. Brilliant. That's what I'm here for. Sometimes I trip and stumble into the answer on accident, face first.
Yeah, of course.
It
Yeah,
works. I'm happy if it gets the job done.
yeah, definitely gave me some interesting things to think about
Very
with it.
cool.
And
Well, I know
sure,
we're on. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just said I am curious if it ever comes back. Like I kind of have been wondering why it hasn't. Maybe
Yeah.
that.
Good chance you don't need it anymore until you do, and then there's a lot of times those as I call it crystallized iconic representations of a specific type of experience might come back, just to say, well, this is familiar enough a way of processing this concept, why reinvent the wheel. So that might be some of the magic of recurring dreams.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to respect your time. I'm gonna try and get you out of here. And I could have rambled less. We could have talked about the dream more, but we had a good chat either way, huh?
That was a great experience. Thank you.
Yeah, nice. Well, it's been great to have you. And I'm going to tell the audience here, we've got this has been our friend Katie Wenger from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She is an individual and couples therapist, author with a focus on psychoeducational material. She's got a book and a podcast, Obstacles Under the Surface. You can find her at higherfulfillment.com, link in the description. Also on Instagram at The Relationship Consultant. And for my part, I'll just say, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Always need more volunteer dreamers. 16 currently available works of historical dream literature. The most recent, Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, available at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. I always pop up a little thing bloop down here. And also MP3 downloads, the complete list of all 16 books. And Katie, thank you for the conversation. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Benjamin, for yours and for having me.
Good deal. And everybody out there, thanks for listening.